Number 10 is already starting off way worse than the monsters. If you remember that list, you'd know that number 10 was just a vanilla contact fusion, but here with the spells we have Escape. Escape simply reads that you can bounce one monster from your field to the hand. Inherent neg-1 and card advantage, and what do you want to use this in? Every archetype that would ever want to bounce themselves, like Mist Valleys or even Yosenjus to some degree, already do that with nearly every card in their archetype. And as good as bouncing spells and traps can be, the same really can't be said about monsters. I mean, you could trigger Cyframe Gear Gamma and then bounce it back to your hand to use later, but you could also just not do that, and that's a better option most of the time. Escape could have some purpose in a cool combo or a legit deck, but I just can't think of it. So it gets number 10 on the list. Number 9 ups the ante by a significant margin already! While Escape is a neg-1 that probably does nothing to help you, Spirit Mask is a neg-1 that already asks that it be killed just for the sake of you losing more cards from your hand. Yes, I know that this sets up the graveyard if you want to dump your hand, but I would just take Cheerful Coffin at that rate. The card only sends as well, so discard effects like the Dark World monster simply don't trigger with this. Anything this card can do, 50 other cards can do better. And genuinely I find it funny that the card says, when you get rid of this card, it takes another one out of spite. Number 8 comes from our boy Xyz, unfortunately, as he played a whole host of terrible cards at two completely different points in the anime. Once when he went down the dual well and played with small vanilla monsters like Soul Tiger, and another time when he based the fate of the world and his card game career off of a dream of banging Alexis, which while completely understandable, is still not the best idea. Considering he literally let his deck go away to the wind, he made another deck based around giving Alexis his sweet little love letter, and Hidden Wish is a part of it. The anime likes doing this sometimes, where a card is more based on something outside of the duel than the duel itself, like Love Letter, which barely didn't make the list. Giving a monster or set card to your opponent, and they get to choose. This was used in the same deck, of course, and the set card Xyz gave over was literally the love letter he wrote to Alexis. So where does Hidden Wish fall into this? Xyz activated Giant Trunade to add this set card back to his hand, which he said was like getting a love letter in return. If that isn't the saddest shit I have ever heard in my life. Also, the card is awful. You have to either bounce back Hidden Wish yourself, or hope to God you're playing against Hey Trunade! And even then you get 1,000 life points and 1,000 points of damage. If this can be looped for an FTK, you could also just use Cannon Soldier or Amazoness Archer to get the same effect, but it doesn't involve jumping through 30 different hoops. So we have a bad card that was played as a self-addressed love letter by someone just trying to get laid, and also have I mentioned the card is terrible! This really is the only card on the list, aside from the obvious if you know what the card is number 1 slot, that has such a story attached to it that it's worth going into, so at least that's something special going for. Number 7 comes from a gang of cards I like to call the Bury and Mirror Match cards, where they literally only seem to work if you're playing against someone playing terrible cards aside from every C100 monster and support card in existence. You see a lot of them in the latter half of Zexal, mainly every single Varian Emperor, and they will be making an appearance on the worst anime traps list in due time. For that, I would like to propose a poll in the cards of this video at the top right of the screen. Would you, dear viewers, prefer to have the list have a singular spot for these cards, or for them to be listed individually on the top 10? I don't know if you all would find it repetitive, so be sure to let me know. Also, leave a like and subscribe if you're new, and be sure to join the Discord in the description, as it really does help out the channel and make this community ever bigger. If we hit 200 likes, I'll keep up a faster pace when uploading these top 10 since I know you guys love them so much. Really tells me how I'm doing. Plugs aside, Xyz Rescue is a bit of a head-turner. This card tries to let you perform an Xyz summon using monsters your opponent controls, which is pretty good, that you own, which is not so good. This card works under the idea that you're playing an Xyz deck, your opponent proceeds to snatch, steal, or otherwise mug you of your monsters during your own turn, and because it's a normal spell card, you can't use it as some sort of, like, spicy tech that you may want to use for any sort of reason. Bury and Mirror Match cards are perfect to go up against each other and nowhere else, so you just kind of make a format out of them and it's pretty fun. Otherwise, you get cards that never go off aside from a very, very niche case that I would like to discuss. Double Sphere Mode. Go into a rank 10. Win the hearts of the people. Number 6 is a card that I legit can't find a use for as hard as I look. Flight of the Dual Dragons is the only card I know of that allows you to reset any and all set cards that you have in the spell and trap card zone. It doesn't bounce them back, it simply now considers your set cards on the field to be set again. Keep in mind the chain energy is only from the hand that the player must pay 500 life points, and also keep in mind it's only for you. The only reason this card, which by the way takes the sending of a dragon you control to the grave to even activate it, isn't higher on the list, is that I'm sure an archetype could come out and support this sort of thing at some point in the future. That and the cards above are just even worse, which I didn't think was possible before writing this. Number 5 is useless. It's completely useless. If it had the real anime effects, it would be good. Or should I say they, as there are all 5 cards with the same effect. Wicked Runes, Sadness, Anger, Doubt, Hatred, and Anguish are all just banish other copies of themselves when they hit the grave. Since this isn't the anime, you can't make your opponent feel these emotions by sending these cards to the graveyard with Wicked Cannon. So what's even the point? Deck thinning? These cards would be a neat tech against the mentally unstable in tournament play, but as they are, they just banish themselves? There's really not much else to say on that. Number 4 is even worse than useless, as it brings back flashbacks to the absolute unit that is Infernity Pawn. D-Force is a card that, yes, does have other anime support, but on its own it's one of the worst cards ever conceived. With the support, that doesn't really change very much. The idea of not drawing cards is still a bad one, regardless of this fear of decking out, and any card that has it is almost automatically terrible. Even when we consider the support, that being, in very quick mentions, Plasma becomes real-life Plasma, kind of Rear Yoku, and Pot of Greed if Pot of Greed also said that you can't draw any other cards aside from literally this card. D-Force is just a whole heaping pile of bad. The fact that there's support for such a bad idea means that they could have gone all out with it. Make you draw 4 cards, gain 8,000 attack, all that jazz. But the cards themselves are fair just by themselves, and then D-Force brings them down to garbage tier. Number 3 starts my favorite 3 cards on the list, which just make me laugh every time I see them because, well, see for yourself. Paper Doll is treated as a monster in your hand. That is it. Anything you could ever want to do with this card is better fulfilled by literally every other monster in existence. Unless you want to play the most tilting game of mind games with Ordeal of a Traveler, skip this card in any deck profile of any deck, and I mean any deck in existence. Number 2 is a field spell that does nothing other than make someone discard to pop it. Wire Mesh Chain Deathmatch is exactly what it sounds like, a bad way to spend the afternoon. I don't care what you do in your free time, just don't expect me to commend you for it when it's beating a buddy until he fucking dies, or if it involves this card that does nothing other than, well, die. The cage is a pessimistic view at life, the critics say. The cage sucks, says the layman. And number 1 is the one you all probably came here to see. Devoted Love. Yep, a spell that just straight up says, lose the game. Negate attack really needed that extra piece of text, huh? But genuinely, there can be no worse card than one that negates an attack, ends the battle phase, gives your opponent a card, and then says during the end of the turn, which isn't even your turn, I may add, you straight up lose. If you're wondering how this was even used, Anna Kaboom, the train girl from Zexal, used it to die and let Yuma draw a card. If that sounds weird, it should! Because Yuma was her partner, but got to draw because I guess she felt like it that day. She straight up cheated, and the card was still bad even in that context. So I would imagine it's entirely justified to put Devoted Love at number 1, as it just... I mean, you lose the game! What more can you take? So that was the list of the top 10 worst anime spells. How'd you guys enjoy? Be sure to tell me in the comments, as well as hit the like and subscribe buttons if y'all haven't already, just to show support for the channel. That like goal of 200 sounds crazy to me, but I think we can do it. I'll keep on the grind making these top 10s, and I'll see you guys next time. Until then, Xyz Rescue, out.